I am Norma being Constantino, and this is my presentation in assessing impacts of PCIA in the Philippine context. My experience with PCIA is based on a story of how people who seek peace have come together in different capacities and roles to challenge the way they think and do their work in conflict-prone communities. I am a development worker, a community worker, so my presentation will be more on the application side of PCIA rather than the theorizing side. Let me then join my colleagues in the academe to help me theorize our stories and live experiences of PCIA. With my sharing, I will be able to contribute to the global knowledge and conflict resolution. The PCIA has been a useful tool for me, and I further hope that it will be sharpened further to become more effective in crafting, fostering, and developing global peace. In general, the purpose of my presentation is I want to share my experience with PCIA, where I and my team use it in settling conflicts in the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. Specifically, I want to expound on how we use the PCIA, the strengths of the PCIA, the limits and the ambiguities of PCIA, and the challenges and recommendations for the PCIA. The flow of my presentation is divided into 4 parts. The first is the context. The second is the application of PCIA. The third part is the analysis and reflections. And the fourth and the last part is on the challenges in theory and practice of PCIA. So where we are right now, here I would like to show you the map of Philippines. Philippines is divided into 3 major islands, the Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao. And we are here in Mindanao. Mindanao is a land of promise. It is the second largest ore, mineral, and nickel deposit in the world. It has the Philippines' major crops: rubber, pineapple, banana, corn, sugar, palm oil, and coconut. But Mindanao has varied social problems from poverty, disease, illiteracy, injustice, lawlessness, secessionists, local government movements, criminality, among others. Name it, we have it. In 1986 elections, then presidential candidate Corazon Aquino described Mindanao as a land of unfulfilled promises, a war zone, a land forced into fratricidal strife, a land where everyday Filipino kills brother Filipino, a land of avaricious exploitation. In 2005, the Asia Foundation commissioned the Social Weather Station to conduct a study on Mindanao conflict. That study revealed that violence in Mindanao has local manifestations. Most sources of violence are local in nature, such as between families and clans, between farmers and landowners, due to crime, between military and rebel groups, among others. However, violence of almost every source is twice as common in the armed. 28% of armed families experience family and clan violence compared to 16% in Philippines. 9% of families in the armed experience crime compared to 4% in the Philippines. 20% of armed residents experience violence due to conflict between Muslim rebels and military. To situate furthermore, in Mindanao, 30% of the population is Muslim. 85% of Philippines' poorest are in the armed. The Human Development Index report revealed that the bottommost 5 provinces of the total 78 are in the armed. It also listed problems such as poverty, unstable peace and order, poor access to basic services. Now I would like to journey you all to our experience on PCIA. As a practitioner, we work for community development in the ARM. Hence, we first must address the existing conflicts in our areas before we can start to talk about development at all. Most of these conflicts are the infamous RIDO. Let me give you some thoughts regarding RIDO. RIDO is a state of recurring hostilities between families and kinship groups, characterized by a series of retaliatory acts of violence carried out to avenge a perceived affront or injustice. Between 1930 to 2005, there have been 1,266 recorded RIDOs, or feuds, killing more than 5,000 people and displacing thousands of families. Of this number, 64% remain unresolved and still growing until now. Clan feuds top the list of conflicts in Mindanao. It has wider implications because it tends to interact with separatist conflict and other forms of armed conflict. Culturally, RIDO is essentially related to the Muslims' notion, sense, and concept of honor, pride, and shame, or locally termed as maratabat. What are the causes and triggers of RIDO? Well, it has a lot. From land disputes, it could be politics, it could be a simple pride, disgrace, or shame. It could be election-related, accident, and all of this. And what are the factors that exacerbating RIDO in Mindanao? First is the formation of an alliance by principals and other families and armed groups, interaction of RIDO with state-level conflicts, the proliferation of firearms, lack of law enforcers and credible mediators, inefficient justice system. After walking through the concepts of clan violence or RIDO, I would like to center now my sharing the application of PCIA in settling this type of conflict. However, to protect the identity of actors and concerned individuals and families, and for unfettered discussion on the analysis and theorizing, I will use pseudonym. So what are the costs of this RIDO? More than 6 years of armed conflict between the two clans from 2001 election. The feud crippled local governance and economic activities and seriously jeopardized any attempt for peace and order in the locality. It cost lives, 9 relatives, 2 innocent bystanders, wounded 13 others, and there's this physical, material, economic damage amounting to 85,000 US dollars. More than that, it also gave birth to 3 more RIDO as an offshoot of armed clashes. In our pre-project assessment of peace and conflict, we analyzed that Indanan has political power over Maranan, being the incumbent administration of the locality. He has the authority to mobilize military and police force. He has the influence in terms of power. However, his group has limited conflict management capacities. It can only resolve conflicts limited to their constituents, but not to people with high influence and respect. For the Maranan side, people have high regard to Sultan Maranan as the supreme sultan of their tribe. Relatives hold strategic leadership position in the armed rebel group. In other words, they have the support. They also own high-powered firearms. So when this case was brought to our attention, we also analyzed, scanned our risk and opportunity. We asked ourselves, is there a room to work in the area? Are levels of violence too high? Is the project appropriate? What needs to be done to reduce chances of failure? In doing so, we identified support from strategic political structures in the area, such as the neighboring local government units. We also have the Regional Reconciliation and Reunification Commission as a support group in mediating with these two groups or families. I also got the support from the CO Multiversity, the Integral Development Services. These are two organizations where I previously belonged. We also got support from the Asia Foundation with funding support from the USAID and the Council of Elders from the nearby area. The 6-year RIDO ended with a 3-year settlement process. So these are some of the photos showing our PCIA activities. After the settlement of the Iranan and the Maranan, they worked for the resolution of the offspring RIDO. The second case that I will be presenting to you now, we also use PCIA in resolving community conflict. So from enemies to allies. This is the case of village or Barangay Chua in Sultan Kudarat province. Barangay Chua, covering an area of 2,000 hectares, is dubbed as the Little Mindanao because of its tri-people composition. The Lumads from the Manumpo tribe, the Muslims from the Maguindanao tribe, and Christian settlers from the Visayas and Mindanao. Due to long exposure of local descent in the area, the local government in Barangay Chua looks at the non-government organizations as dissidents or as political provocators. The local government units is always suspicious of NGO work. This has unfortunately resulted to their mistrust in the Daguma Range Tri-People Organization and its members, organized by NGOs. The LGUs or the local governments did not support the self-help efforts of the People's Organization. Worse, they oftentimes obstruct implementation of community projects. Hence, there exists animosity between NGO members of the Daguma Range Tri-People Organization and the local government. The PCIA training served as a venue for the NGO workers, government workers, and community leaders to come together, meet, and learn together about peace, conflict, and development. The people's organizations are pressed to strengthen itself, organizational management, and membership to impress on the local government their intentions of community change. So there was monthly meetings were conducted regularly. They resolved petty issues. Monitoring and interventions are heightened as a result of the PCIA workshop that we conducted in the area. So PCIA became a strategy of bridging gaps, and it also promotes organizational goals. So what are our analysis and reflections vis-a-vis the strengths, the limits, and ambiguities of PCIA? In these two cases, they are just few of the cases we attend to in the ARM. When we enter into a community to implement a project, there is always an existing conflict that needs to be settled. Hence, development work in the ARM starts with peace building. The PCIA has been a useful The PCIA, as advocated by Dr. Kenneth Bush, provided a broad theoretical framework of conflict resolution. It provided useful guides and principles for settling conflicts. as peace building consists of two inseparables: the construction of the structures of peace and the deconstruction of the structures of violence. It is not imposition of solutions, but the creation of a space within which indigenous actors can identify problems and formulate their own solutions. So what were the notable impacts of the settlement of the Rido? First, it transformed conflict players into peace players. They settled conflicts in the area. Second, it restored governance in the area. It restored economic activities, which was disrupted due to the Rido. It settled the offspring Ridos and served as an inspiration and model to other existing Ridos in Mindanao. The limits of PCIA. As designed by Dr. Bush, PCIA is project-oriented, where a project is a community intervention, a response to a gap or need in community or area to avoid development of conflict or does not exacerbate existing conflict. Our experience, it goes beyond the limit. My experience used in PCIA, it used as a strategy to solve conflicts. So it was a control mechanism. What are the strengths of PCIA? It was a helpful framework for conflict resolution management. It was also a useful and practical tool. However, there are ambiguities of PCIA. PCIA is required only on conflict-prone areas. In general, Philippines is conflict-prone. It is due to its long colonial history and persistent poverty. Both have instilled the culture of violence among its people. Hence, PCIA could be a very useful tool or framework even in areas outside of arms. In terms of PCIA time frame, before, during, or post-project, conflict may develop later, long after a project is done. Conflict may still arise later due to the completed project. So what are the emerging challenges of PCIA? Social praxis enhances the original or conventional PCIA because it is project-based. However, there is this emerging new application of PCIA as a tool to resolve existing conflict and as a control mechanism. So when PCIA is used in settlement of existing conflicts, it is worthwhile to broaden the PCIA framework to integrate the following: participatory and consensus-based approach, not an imposition by the experts, but must be articulated and decided by the warring parties involved. Tapping the local resource, be it human, customs and traditions, the government structure, military, is a contributory factor in resolving conflicts. The third is mainstreaming women's role in conflict resolution is an effective strategy. The importance of community development in post-settlement scenario, such as organizing families and clans and get them involved in peace work. A thorough planning and strategizing will be undertaken and supported to prevent escalation or recurrence of conflict. And the second is to strengthen the communities through community development programs. PCIA as a control mechanism is to instill ownership of the mechanism to ensure order and harmony in the organization, because it is only the community will allow or decide to do this. So some discursive issues on the PCIA. Again, PCIA is project-oriented to prevent conflict in project, or PCIA is used to settle conflicts. It is also a tool, a framework, or a methodology, but it is also a control mechanism as long as decided by the community. PCIA as participatory, it is but It is also a big caution as is needed here because participatory as defined by the stakeholders themselves. Participatory may not work at some context. Then PCIA in terms of its time frame, PCIA is good in terms of immediate settlement of conflicts. But what about in terms of remission of conflicts? Here, I identified some potentials and challenges of the PCIA. Bringing PCIA approach to the household level to lessen or eliminate conflicts. What is PCIA without the foreign or external funding? How do we see PCIA as ingrained or embedded in the local system?